Hello and welcome to another Aspire Design and Home webinar. We learned about our friend Maryline Damour's radio show and the lineup of having the one and only Justina Blakeney as a guest. So we kind of just co-opted this as a Aspire webinar, and why not spread the message wide and far? As I love maximalism, it is with great pleasure that we have the queen of maximalism, Miss Justina Blakeney and Maryline Damour of the Kingston Design Connection. Thanks, and take it away, Maryline.
Hello, my name is Maryline Damour. I'm an interior designer based here in the Hudson Valley. I'm also the founder of the annual Kingston Design Show House, which is what sort of spurred this radio show, because that has afforded me the opportunity to meet a lot of amazing creatives. And so today we have with us Justina Blakeney. She's a designer, she's a artist. She's the founder of Jungalow, which I don't need to say too much about that because most of us on the planet know this amazing creative company. So Justina, thank you so much. We're so excited to have you on.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, where in the world are you located?
I am in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, wonderful. Now, before we talk about your current work, which is varied, I'd love to take you back a little bit and sort of give us an idea of how you got started. What did you study in school, for example?
Yeah, I went to UCLA and I studied world arts and cultures there, which was a unique program to UCLA. It was kind of a mix of sociocultural anthropology, art history, and art theory. So I got to kind of dig my hands into lots of different stuff, and it was an interdisciplinary major. So I was able to study in both the School of Arts and Architecture and the School of Letters and Science. And that was what one of the main reasons I wanted to be in that major is I never like choosing one thing, one lane. I want to explore. So yeah, I studied world arts and cultures and got my minor in Italian.
Okay. Now, was it your intention to become an artist when you went to school?
Honestly, I didn't have an exact idea or a clear sense of sort of what I wanted to be when I finished school. I really wanted to use that time just to explore and figure out what I was interested in and just to learn more and meet people, which I recognize now is pretty luxurious. But yeah, for me, it was really about just figuring out who I was, who I wanted to be. I sort of had this idea I was going to work in a creative field and in a creative industry. I just wasn't exactly sure what form that was going to take.
Right. And, and I know you say that, and you're right, it is a form of luxury that you do have the opportunity to explore these varied subjects. But that's one of the things that I always tell, my younger cousins, because when else do you have the opportunity than while you're a student to actually do that? And who knows what you might uncover?
Absolutely. And I think when you're getting your, BA or, right after high school and you're sort of, jumping into college, figuring out what you want to do, that is the time to explore if you can, right? And sort of figure out what you're good at, what lights you up, what types of people are involved in different things that you might gravitate towards. So yeah, I think that was a really important kind of exploratory time for me.
Yep. And your exploration led you all the way to Italy after college. How did that happen?
It did. So I spent my junior year abroad in Italy when I was at UCLA and just fell in love. I fell in love with everything about it, the culture, the food, just being surrounded by beauty all the time. And the Italian culture is very sort of driven by aesthetics. So yeah. I decided once I got back to Los Angeles after my year abroad there, that once I finished school, I wanted to go back. And so actually the day after graduation, my sister, Faith, who's also an interior designer, we decided to hop on a plane and go to Italy and move there.
Literally the day after graduation?
Literally the day after graduation. Yeah, we had to get out of our apartment. So I was like, I guess we're leaving. So we packed up 2 humongous suitcases and didn't really have a great idea of what we were going to do once we got there, or how it was going to go, or how long we were going to stay, or anything. But we just left. And eventually we ended up signing up for a fashion school mainly so that we could get visas in order to stay in the country for longer than 3 months at a time. And so we signed up to go to a school called Polimoda, which is the FIT sister school, and it's in Florence. And so all of a sudden we were in fashion design classes, meeting, mostly Italian students there who were also interested in fashion and design, and sort of got a really good design foundation. Everything from color theory to pattern making, very concept driven as well, like how to create a collection around a concept, and some basic computer skills that have really served me well over the years. So that was the first thing that we did when we got there was we did this design program. It also allowed us to work part-time. As part of the visa, you're allowed to be a student and work part-time.
Gotcha.
So did everything from cocktail waitressing to tutoring to I worked at a literary agency.
Wow.
Doing translation. So I was just kind of trying to make a few coins,
right.
Figure out how to stay there at that time.
Gotcha. And then one of the things that you did, which is unbelievable to me, is that you actually opened up a shop in Italy.
I did. It's sort of unbelievable to me too, looking back. I'm like, how did I do this? Yeah. So after fashion school, my sister and I were like, okay, we love it here. We want to stay. And we kind of want to start our own thing. And so at first, we actually just started designing handbags. And outside of Florence, in a city called Prato, is where most of the high-end Italian fashion brands.
Yes, I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah, so it's just like a half-hour train ride outside of Florence, and so we found a couple of small factories who would work with us, and so we started designing our own handbags and making them, and it was really early, and we were just trying to figure our stuff out. But we thought to ourselves, you know what, we should get a little space, just a space or an atelier space where we can work and meet up and work on this project. And so we found a little spot, very, very tiny. It was 800,000 lira a month, which was at the time about $400. Oof. And so it was really inexpensive, and it was in a great area near the university. And we were like, you know what, we're gonna rent this place out and see what we can do. But the front of the atelier space had una vetrina, which is like a shop window. And we were like, oh my gosh, we could have this be our atelier, but we could actually turn it into a little.
Why not?
As well. And so it was like very all happenstance and sort of one thing leading us to the next. And we ended up opening up this little boutique.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, having had that experience of being an entrepreneur so early in your business, was there anything that you gained from that kind of still carries through in terms of your business today?
So many things. I mean, I think first of all, just like having the audacity to just try things out. And I mean, a lot of it was just led by, we had no idea what we were doing, but we were just going to try it out, and we were going to pull different people in to try and help us, and just sort of fearlessly go after this thing. And that was really a great lesson, because I think that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur, no matter what you're starting and no matter where you're starting it. So it really is just about diving in, committing, and working hard at it every day. So that was huge. And, you know, after that experience in Italy with the boutique and doing that for, 5 or 6 years, I was like, ooh, if I can deal with Italian bureaucracy, I can do anything, because it was quite a thing.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I'm from Haiti, and I have a lot of family members and younger cousins, especially since after the earthquake, who've gone back and opened up businesses. And I tip my hat off. The bureaucracy, I would never. So yeah, that's a tremendous thing.
A lot of patience, a lot of learnings along the way. Mm-hmm.
Now, people know you as a designer, but a lot of people's introduction to you is as an interior designer. And a lot of people through your home have seen many of your beautiful interiors. So what is your relationship with interior design?
Yeah, so after I spent the 7, almost 8 years in Italy, I came back to the United States and spent a couple of years in New York. And then after that, I moved back to Los Angeles, where I live now. And when I got back, I didn't have my footing. I didn't really know, I had done the boutique thing. I had worked on a couple craft books. I was writing and editing for a few arts and culture magazines. And I sort of was in this design world sort of tangentially, but I didn't really know exactly what I was doing career-wise. And I was in my late 20s and I was just kind of trying to figure out how to make some money and how to be creative every day. So I ended up starting my design blog, which really was just a way to chronicle my creative adventures, every day. And I just sort of made a commitment to blog every single day about something that inspired me. And it really was very, very open-ended. Through blogging, I got more and more interested in interiors. And so it sort of naturally started to take up more space on my blog. I started playing around and tinkering more in my own home and sharing images of that. And as this started to happen, mostly for work at the time, I was doing work as a graphic designer and art director for a lot of small businesses. So I was doing, logo design and, taking photos for products and just helping small businesses kind of get their look and feel together. And I thought this was fun. And what started to happen was that clients would start reading my blog and then naturally say things like, oh, well, I actually really love your style for interiors. Also, do you want to decorate my home?
Right.
And so it was very almost just like the boutique in Italy. It was just sort of like we saw an opportunity and I just said yes. And I said, I'm okay, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try it out.
Yeah.
And, I'm just going to be candid with my clients about my greenness, my lack of experience, and just hope that things, go well. And so I started doing that for a few years, and I was throughout this time juggling all different types of creative clients. So again, I wasn't just doing interior design, and it wasn't even just for residential spaces. I was doing a lot of commercial stuff. I was doing everything from designing menus and packaging to styling for magazines, designing websites. Like I was programming. I was just sort of this creative Jill of all trades that was saying yes to any and everything that was remotely creative that landed on my desk. And turns out doing that has served me so well in my career now, because I have sort of experience in a very comprehensive way through working with all these small businesses, trying to help them create brand identities and stand out in a crowd, and learning all different facets of what that means before I really started my own business.
Right. And that's one of the things that we talk a lot about on the show, because, one of the typical skill sets that's lacking for a lot of creatives is that kind of business side marketing side of the equation. And that's something that you've been very successful at doing. How do you think about when you think about marketing your business and positioning your business? Where does that go for you in terms of what you focus on?
For me, everything always boils down to the story. And so whether it's a project I'm working on or even in some of the mentoring sessions that I do, I always encourage people to think about the story of what they're doing. So what does that mean exactly? If you're doing, let's just say like a vignette in your room, like what's exciting about this? What could be the hook for, a PR story, for example? Are there items in the vignette that are meaningful to you? Where did you get them? Where did they come from? Why is putting these two things together? Why does it create something unique and special? Always kind of understanding what your why is and figuring that out. And then in doing so, it's also similar to coming up with captions for, an Instagram post or something like that. What's the story that you're telling about a beautiful picture? I oftentimes find that stories are more memorable than anything else. People connect to stories, it resonates, they think about their own experiences. And in doing so, you're able to leave a lasting impression on people when you are sharing personal stories, whether, and tapping into that authenticity. So
Absolutely.
with everything that I do, whether it's a product or a room design, or anything that I'm doing, you'll notice as I'm sharing it, or if it's, on in a magazine or something like that, you're going to get like a personal story about that thing. And I think that really helps kind of cement the idea and the concept into people's minds.
Absolutely. And one of the great ways that you've done that is by opening up your home and sort of sharing that story and evolution, with your readers. Now, so can you speak a little bit about how your home has served as a design laboratory for you?
Absolutely. So after, several years of doing all that client work that I was doing with both interior design and other types of design, throughout that period, I was really using my home as my kind of creative laboratory. Partially because sometimes with the client work, I felt a little bit creatively stifled because I couldn't just unleash and do whatever I wanted. I needed to do what would be best for them and their families. And so I really then was able to use my own home as a creative outlet to be as wild and as maximal and as crazy as I wanted to and really try things out. And so that's always been a really important part my of my process, and I think of my success as well, because I also am a real like learn by doing type of person. And so there's only so much I feel like you can learn just by watching. Actually trying things out, whether it's a paint color on a wall or moving furniture, or even more practical things when it comes to design, like, learning about, how wide a grout line should be or something like this. Like, learning is all about just trying it out. And then, tying together all the learnings to understand
Absolutely.
patterns and being able to then identify, oh, you know what, I like these kind of tiles with this grout line because it makes it look like X, Y, or Z. But you don't
Right.
really know that until you try things out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, how important is the doing of it? Because through your exploration and through being true to yourself, you actually created a very unique aesthetic that had never been seen before. Can you talk a little bit about how that happened and how you created that? Because it really is very specific, and nobody's been able to emulate it. It's literally your brand and your authenticity.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I actually talk a lot about this in my new book, Jungalow, Decorate Wild. And for me, I think so much of my work as an artist and a designer is sort of me putting what's on the inside of me on the outside. And I think that can take so many different, that can sort of manifest itself in so many different ways. But I think I sew my culture, my background, the travels that I've experienced along the way. I sort of sew all of that into my style and kind of wear that on the outside. And so I think that for me, that's why when people say, "Oh, your style is so, unique or different," like, how did you come up with it? It wasn't so much something that I came up with. It was just it's in me.
Yeah,
It's inside me.
Yeah, which is why you can't replicate it, which is why the story is you don't have to even invent a story. It's very clear that it's your story and that it's unique to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it also speaks to the marketing, because we talk a lot about brand positioning and what's your value proposition, and people try and sort of get that through market research. But what you're talking about is really focusing on what it is that you're trying to say, because once you have that, you can create something that is unique to you that nobody else can do, and then you have a brand positioning and a company that stands out. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit. Jungalow. So first of all, how'd you come up with the name Jungalow?
So when I moved back to Los Angeles after, being away for almost a decade, I had my first apartment here was very small, and it was the first time I'd ever lived by myself. And so I really felt that freedom like never before to be able to kind of unleash my my
Right.
wild side and my creativity. So I had botanical wallpaper up all over the space, which I had found at a thrift shop in New York City, and gallery walls and tons of plants. And it was just like, oh yes, this is my lair. This is my creative lair. And just really was finally felt like I had a place that was all mine, that really reflected who I was as a person, as a designer, as an artist. And so I had some friends over one evening, and you're hanging out, drinking wine, sitting on the sofas, and they looked around. They were like, "Yeah, it's so cool how here in LA they have all these little like bungalows," because it was a little bungalow on a whole row of little bungalows. And yours is like jungly. It's like a jungle bungalow. And it was like, for me, this light bulb went off, and it was like, boom, Jungalow. And I know you speak a lot of languages as well. I speak quite a few languages, and there's something also about the way a word sounds, or like the movement that your mouth needs to make in order for a word to kind of in order to say a word. And to me, the moment I said Jungalow, I almost like laughed. Like it's a funny word.
It's
fun.
fun for sure.
It's bouncy. It's got some bounce to it. And I was just like, okay, that's my thing now. Jungalow.
Right, right. No, I love it. That's wonderful. Now, can you talk a little bit? So, for those of us who have not seen your aesthetic, you talk a lot about botanicals, colors, maximalism came up. What is it for you when you kind of talk about your work?
Well, I love the word wild, and that's why I put that word in the title of my new book, because I think it hits on something, on many things that I try and tap into. So it is about sort of my most wild self. And when I think about that, that means I'm not catering to anybody. I'm not
Mhm.
following. I'm just tapping into really what's inside me, my most wild self. So I love that aspect of it. The word wild also obviously has a connotation about nature and plants, and you think about wildlife and all of that, which really plays a huge role for me in my design work. I'm so inspired by nature. It's a big part of how I feel you can create a healthful home, is by
Mhm.
calling nature into your home and creating, fostering a deeper connection with nature in our home. So for that reason, that word really, really resonates with me as well. So there's sort of all these reasons why I think calling my style wild, also because I do love a color clash,
Yeah,
and I love maximalism, and I like things to feel wild in that sense
yeah.
as well. In a paradoxical way, that kind of environment really makes me feel calm and centered. And so, yeah, my wild style is about embracing who I am and unleashing it, and really letting myself sort of luxuriate in my wild self.
Yeah. No, and I know what's so great about that is, kind of the leading by example, because that's such an important sort of concept for you that it's in the title of your new book, right? Jungalow, Decorate Wild. Um, because so many of us are intimidated by interior design, and people, as much as they really want to reflect themselves in their space, they have a hard time giving themselves that permission. So it's wonderful to see
Mhm.
you embracing that. And not only have you done that in your home, but also throughout various types of products. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the varied sort of products and designs that you do?
Yeah. So after having those experiences of working with clients, I got a little bit burnt out on doing client work. And, I thought to myself, I love the interior design world. I love creating space. I love vintage shopping, and I love drawing and painting, and how can I sort of express my love of these things without having to do the client work, which I was not finding particularly fulfilling. And so I started designing products, and I started designing surface pattern designs, um, just and throwing them up on the blog. It wasn't even like I had a partner or any idea of where this was going to go, but just like everything in life, I just knew that I just had to put myself out there and just start
Right.
practicing and getting better. So I started doing that, and I would just do spec work and just start designing different things, started building up my own pattern archive and library, of my own print and pattern work. And after a few years of doing that, I hooked up with a licensing agent who basically said, "Look, you've got a really kind of iconic style. It's very different from everything that's out there, and you've got a large social media audience. And I think we can parlay this into product lines." And I said, "Great, where do I sign up? That
Go
sounds
for it.
perfect." Yeah, so I started working together with her, and what we started to do was to create pitch decks for sort of, my top line companies or brands that I thought would be a good fit for what I was trying to do. And we just
Mhm.
started pitching, and little by little by little, year after year, we started our first two collections that we launched were wallpaper and then rugs with Leloy rugs.
Yep.
And it was just like, partnership after partnership, little by little, me learning a lot just as I went along, also because each of these products, there are certain things in common with, as far as like the design process and how to go
Mhm.
about communicating the ideas to my design partners. But at the same time, there are things that are wildly different about
Yeah,
each one.
yeah.
So I really enjoyed that process. I get bored easily, so I love the
We can
variation.
tell.
I love the variation of sort of learning how to design furniture, learning how to design rugs, learning about rug constructions, learning about the difference between bamboo and rattan, like really digging in, figuring out all of those things, and along the way designing products under the Justina Blakeney brand and the Jungalow brand, and kind of creating this.
Yeah. And you know what I love about that is that on Instagram, for those of us who follow you at Justina Blakeney, you share a lot about even your very early process. Sometimes you'll share drawings and then we'll see them turn into ceramics or something else. And I love that you put yourself out there in that way. How important is that to you, to continuously sort of push yourself and put yourself out there?
I think it's very important to me. And I think part of why it's important is because as I was coming up, and this is still true now a lot of the time, is that the way things happen in the world seem very mysterious and seem very out of reach, and have, over my life, I'll look at someone who I admire and be like, oh my God, how did this person get here? How do these things come into the world? Like, it all just seemed very mysterious. And as a storyteller, as someone who came up in the blogging world, I really enjoy demystifying the process for people.
Thank you for that, by the way. Very important.
I just think there's something really freeing about sort of seeing the simplicity of, look where this idea started and look where it ended up. And I think that if I had somebody who had kind of demystified some of that stuff for me as I was kind of coming up, it would have just given me a lot of hope that, oh my gosh, I can kind of draw, I can kind of do this, I can kind of do that. Maybe one day I can also have my own brand, or maybe one day I can, have brand partnerships, or whatever it is that, different up and coming designers and creatives are trying to achieve. I think showing the building blocks of how I got from A to Z, my hope is that that empowers people and inspires people.
No, that's wonderful. The other thing, I'm kind of seeing a little thread here. You started out with pattern making, which made me think about, your fashion background and the work you did in Italy. But today, as we were saying before, you have rugs, you have ceramics, you've moved into a lot of different spaces in the home decor world. As you move through these various practices, do you carry through, certain lessons learned from, working with fabric versus working on ceramics? How does that translate for you?
So much so. And every different partnership that I do, I learn so many different things that can be applied to the next thing. And that's true from both a kind of creative and artistic standpoint, a materials standpoint, and a logistical and sort of business standpoint as well.
Oh, even there. Interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, that's actually a really big part of it. So much of what I've learned over the past 5 years has to do with logistics. Like, if, for example, when I first started designing furniture, I was not thinking about how things could be assembled or disassembled to ship via UPS versus something that would need a white glove kind of treatment upon arrival. But what sort of very quickly became clear was that because most of my business is done online, I need to be able to ship lightweight items that are small. Otherwise, you end up having to pay thousands of dollars for shipping on an item that might not even cost thousands of dollars. And so how does that work? So learning also the logistical and practical sides of the business is equally as important, and to apply to the next partnership. And so little by little, I'm learning every single day. I learn something that kind of blows my mind. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I never thought of that.
now this leads nicely into my next question. So as you are sort of building your company and sort of extending these new ways, how are you building those competencies? Are you, do you work with established people as you are working on new products and new spaces?
Yeah. So right now, the way my business works is that on jungalow.com, which is our e-commerce shop, we do about half the stuff that we do is through partners that are
Mhm.
handling the manufacturing and sort of distribution. And so uh, that takes a lot of the weight off of us. However, the items that are sold like that are also available other places. So, it's not exclusive to us, but it's sort of easy. And then the
Mhm.
other half of the items that we are working on are stuff that are exclusive to Jungalow Shop. And, we're designing them in house. We design a lot of the other stuff as well, but it's not exclusive. So,
Right.
other shops have that, which is great because we're getting our brand out there. I love,
Absolutely.
it's so great that we can work with, multiple retailers and grow the brand that way as well. But it's also important that Jungalow be a destination where you can find stuff there that you can't find anywhere else. That's important to me. It's also important from the business perspective. And so yeah, we do about half and half, and we take a lot of the learnings from the partnerships and apply them to what we're doing in house.
Right. Yeah.
And we work with both people who've kind of come up with me. Like a lot of my employees have been, well, not a lot, but I don't, my team is 11 full-time people. So, we're small, we're still
Right.
very, very small, but a lot of people have been with me for years and years, and we've kind of learned the ropes together. And then now we're at the place where we're also bringing some people in who are more established or who have been doing this type of stuff for years. And
Right.
so it's
Right.
kind of
Right.
a mix, but I really enjoy that. I'm all about bringing diverse types of people together with diverse backgrounds. I think it's important that some people have not really been steeped in the
Mhm.
industry and can bring a sort of fresh perspective. But then, of course, it's also great to have people who have the industry experience as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. As creatives, many of us, actually do have our own companies. So it's great to kind of hear a little bit, how you have developed your company. Um, but to that end, as you are developing your company, can you share, some of the, I don't know, like the easiest aspects or the aspects that you've enjoyed the most in developing your company, or some challenges that you've experienced?
Yeah, so I'm a kind of a visionary type of person. So one of my favorite things is just coming up with new ideas and then
Mhm.
figuring out ways that we can execute on these ideas. So um, that's really fun for me. Like I'll have these crazy ideas. Sometimes my team will look at me and be like, "JB, you're crazy. Like, do you really think maybe I'll do X or Y or Z?" And I'm like, "Look, we might not be able to do it in the next 6 months. This could be something that we like aim for 3 years down the road. But I think if we work at it starting now, we'll be able to get there." And so
Right.
I think, I'm a dreamer, I'm a very big thinker, and I'm also a doer. And so I love to come up with these really, really big goals and then slice them up into sort of uh, monthly tasks, weekly tasks, daily tasks, in order to chip away at them to get where I'm trying to go.
Right, right. Which explains why you're Jungalow's creative director, because you are in that big picture space, sort of
Yes.
developing the brand.
Yes, exactly.
Now, I mean, I can't even imagine what your answer will be to this question because you do so many different things. But is there a particular sort of product or project that you're interested in? We're going to dive into your book in a little bit, but I'm just interested in terms of what's your most interesting thing to work on?
So right now, I think it's product design. That's the thing that just gets me the most excited, because I love the feeling of starting with an idea in my head
Mhm.
and then holding that thing in my hand and then seeing that thing in people's homes all around the world.
It's like magic.
All it feels like a magical kind of experience for me. And because I love painting and drawing, and that's a very meditative practice for me. I mean, if I could, I would just do that all day long.
Is that where it
Um,
starts for you always?
it is, yeah. Things start with sketches, doodles, just a tiny spark of an idea, and just being able to see that thing come to life, and the challenge also of trying to make it fit what that initial spark was, or the vision, or even the journey that it
Mm,
goes on. And maybe it doesn't come out exactly how I initially envisioned it. Maybe it comes out differently, but that process for me is really fun. And I feel like so lucky that I get to do this. So, I mean, I sort of couldn't have designed a better job for myself, I think, because it does encompass all the different things that I really enjoy doing. And I get to do it on, ceramics or furniture or a book or, in all these different media. And it's really fun.
Wow. Yeah. So turning to your book, so you just now published your third book. Is that correct?
Yes, it's my third solo book. I did have a series of craft books that were out in my 20s that I did with my sister Faith and other people from my time in Italy.
Can we still find those?
You can.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yes.
You need to share a list with me because I had no idea. That is wonderful.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. When people are like, oh, this is your third book. I'm like, oh, it's actually my seventh, which is kind of crazy. But those books definitely led me also on this journey to where I am now. Right. Taught me so much. Yeah.
And so in terms of extending your brand and actually being a published author, what was important to you about sort of sharing your work in that medium?
It was so important for me, especially the New Bohemians, which came out in 2015. I thought before, at the time, being sort of known as a design blogger, it just didn't have the kind of clout or the kind of heft that I knew I was going to need, especially as a woman of color in this industry. To push down the barriers, I needed something that I could attach to my title. It was like I hear you. Yeah. I needed to say author. I needed to say New York Times bestselling author. I needed to say award-winning something, like I felt like I needed that in order to open the doors I was trying
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Right. It's not an unimportant thing sitting in our seats for sure.
Yeah. So I really felt like I needed that. And I think I did. Unfortunately, like we shouldn't have to need that, but I do think, the barriers are higher for us. And so being able to, once the book came out and it became a New York Times bestseller, I was like, boom. And it was so clear. It was like from one day to the next, it kind of catapulted me into this different category where all of a sudden I was a viable person to come speak at, a trade show or a thing. I was a viable person to do a product collab with. Like,
so you really saw that marked change after that watershed moment, the whole thing.
Not subtle. It was not subtle. It was like, it was just very, very, very clear. And I, because I had those experiences prior with writing those other books, I kind of knew that. Like I knew the reaction that people had if I said like, oh yeah, I'm a published author. It was like, oh, that's a different story, just like kind of giving you that heft and that clout. And
absolutely.
And so, you got to play games sometimes.
Yeah. No. This is such an important conversation because you opened up by saying that I knew that it was something I had to do, meaning that it was a strategic decision on your part. And I think a lot of times, I come out of a 15-year business consulting degree before I became an interior designer. And when I moved into the creative space, that's a lot of what, I was like, that's interesting, because as creatives, the natural assumption is that your work speaks for you and that your work carries you forward. But as you're saying, whether it's barriers to entry or whatever, you have to be strategic about what do you need to really make an impact.
Absolutely. And I think it was very, very clear for me. Like I said, there was a clear marked difference between the types of meetings I was able to land before and after. It was an incredible platform builder. And yes, it was strategic because I basically lost money in making that book. Like I was not paid well for that book
because you weren't known as much.
Because I was not known, and it cost me a fair amount of money to get the book made.
Wow.
And so we were traveling all over the country. I had to pay photographer, DeVito, and it was a hustle to create this thing, but I had this feeling that if I did go for it and spend the money and get it done, that it would be worth it. It was.
Yeah. And also, it's an opportunity to kind of cement your philosophy, which, definitely started with the New Bohemians, and now we're seeing it in your new book. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how that weaves itself in terms of theme throughout your books?
So I think one of the things that really helped me stand out, besides the fact that I think I'm honing in on a style, especially when the New Bohemians came out, I think that the style that I was showing and sharing in the book was just not that popular at the time. And it sort of was like,
people were afraid of all that color, all that pattern.
People,
yeah.
I mean, I definitely had a lot of reviews and things like that were on the book that were positive, but that were, people were saying things like, well, I could never live this way. However, it is a great book.
It's lovely for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of that, like, I'm like, okay, I see your little passive aggressive thing that you're doing here. But yeah, it was like, so it was about sort of saying this is a valid style. And it was also unbelievable to me, the amount of DMs, emails, messages I got on all platforms of people saying, thank you for writing this book. I've had my whole life, people have said like, oh, your style is garish, your style's cluttered, your style, is this, is that, it's not chic, it's not blah, blah, blah. And like seeing these spaces and seeing how beautiful they are and that other people like this style too, it does give me a sense of validation around it. And so I love that, because it's just allowing people to step into who they feel they truly are without shame and without feeling like they need to put on a front. And so I was like, wow, this is so powerful. And that really also got me thinking so much about the connection between self-expression and design, and how design can increase the quality of life. And by expressing yourself fully is a really healthy way to live. And so I really took a lot of those lessons and sewed them into Decorate Wild, about sort of the intersection of wellness and self-expression and design.
Yeah. I love that you say that, because one of the things that I love about being an interior designer is that the discovery that clients go through, because you do discover things about yourself. Because when do you have time to really kind of delve into who you are? How do you want to be seen in your space and all of that stuff? So I love that's kind of a key tenet in your book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important and often overlooked in the kind of design industry. Oftentimes it is about form and function, which is important. Form and function is very important. But I do think that there's another sort of tenet that is missing from there, which has to do with self-expression, which has to do with the feeling. Like
Absolutely.
form, function, and maybe then we add feeling, because we've got the alliteration going.
Right. Yep, exactly. So your new book, I think it just launched just a few weeks ago, right?
It did.
Woohoo! There it is. Look at that cover. So was there an initial spark for you that was like, oh my God, I have to sit down and go do this? Like how did that come about, this new book?
Yeah. So, book projects are big projects. So I wasn't sure I was ready to embark on a new project. I had a lot going on. But my publisher came to me and they said, we really want to do another book with you. And I love doing book projects.
And we've been waiting for another.
I had a lot of people reaching out about it. And I said, okay, you know what, maybe this is a good time to do a new book, but I want this one to feel really different from the other two. The other two were, more outward facing. I was going into people's homes. I was interviewing them. I was sort of, bringing that out. And so I wanted this book for me to be a little bit like of me looking inwards more. And I wanted to have that journey kind of as I was writing and working on this book. And so this book is a lot more personal to me. That's one of the reasons I'm on the cover. It is sort of about my design philosophy, how I think that, how I express myself and how I sort of tap into the things that I love. And then I have lots of tips and ideas and activities for the readers to be able to sort of go through that same discovery and pull that out for themselves, so that readers can understand what colors they're gravitating towards, and what textures, and how to put things in their home in a way that works for them. It really is an exercise in tapping into your most wild self and bringing that out in your home. And I'm kind of trying to shepherd my readers through that process.
Right. And again, as you were saying before, you're starting that process with the personal story.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. Now, as busy as you are, I mean, what does that process look like? How did you write this book?
It was hard.
Because a lot of us would love to publish a book, but yeah, tell us a little bit about what that process is like for you.
I'm a hustler. So, there is something to be said for the fact that, I work very long hours. I'm up late at night working. I get up early in the morning and start working again. So I don't want to, there's a lot of that. And I also had a lot of help. It wasn't just me. My husband actually wrote the book with me. He's a writer. And so, I would write a draft and hand it to him, and he would sand it and polish it. And
good man to have.
Very good. Yeah. I work with my husband too. I know you do as well. So, there's something in there that is, there's a lot of love in the book, because there's a lot of collaboration, and it's not just me doing everything myself.
Right.
I think another thing is that I'm really passionate about it, and I love doing all the aspects of creating a book, which is why I've done so many of them. I love writing. Writing to me is a really fun creative outlet. I absolutely love, I've done a lot of graphic design. I love visual communication. I love thinking about fonts on a page. I'm a magazine junkie.
Are you involved in all those aspects of your book?
Yes.
You are. That's wonderful.
Very closely involved. In fact, with all the books I've done, including the craft books back in my 20s, I lay out the entire book during the writing process.
Wow.
So when I'm done with the book and I'm handing over a finished manuscript to my editor and the art director, I am handing them not just the words and a file with all the images, but I'm actually handing them an InDesign document that I've designed the entire book out and laid it out, because I don't actually know how to create a book without doing that, because the words are tied so closely to the pictures that if I'm not seeing it kind of being created as if I'm not doing that work as I go along, I can't visualize it.
Right.
So it's like a product to me. The same with product design. I have to sketch it out. I have to know the patterns that are going to be on it. Everything tells a story. Like there's a reason for every image, every pattern, everything that's on the book. There's a reason why it's like that. There's a reason why things were placed there. And then, of course, then I hand it over to the art director at Abrams, and Deb Wood. She's amazing. And then she puts her magical spin on it. But that process of laying out the book for me is very integral to the whole thing.
Right. And you know what I love about that, kind of tying it back to what we were talking about in terms of marketing earlier, is that the brand is reinforced. So it's not just the words, it's also the imagery, it's also the font. And it also makes me think of kind of, you're still continuing to pull from your graphic design background, from your writing background, and how those threads have kind of come together into your current work today.
Absolutely. I sometimes joke that I feel like I'm like Slumdog Millionaire. I don't know if you remember that movie, but
yes.
Like his whole life like kind of worked out so that he could answer all those questions about, on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I feel like sometimes I'm like, wow, if I hadn't have done those craft books, I wouldn't have known how to get a literary agent and do these books. If I hadn't done graphic design, I wouldn't know how to do surface pattern design and packaging design. And if I hadn't have worked with all those companies helping them with branding, I wouldn't have concepts about branding. And so I had this like such a weird windy road of getting to where I am, but every weird odd job, even working at that random literary agency when I was back in Italy, like that was the first time I designed a website, was for that company. And so I was like, and I learned how to do it by reading an Italian magazine of like how to design websites. So like every weird, random, odd job that I took kind of led me to where I am today.
Yeah. And, and obviously you couldn't have known that you needed those skill sets, but what you were saying earlier about sort of being open, and exploring different things, is the reason why you were able to kind of have those skill sets. And when the opportunity was there, you were able to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So as we're talking about all of this stuff, is there something else, whether it's related to Jungalow or something else completely unrelated that you'd like to explore, a new field, a new practice?
Well, I still feel like I am really exploring the world of painting
Mm,
more. This is something that honestly, the pandemic has given me more time to practice painting. And for the past several years, I've been really focused on watercolors and gouache on paper. And I'm sort of ready to start exploring canvases. I'm ready to start
wow.
exploring larger formats of artwork. I really
This is
love.
like breaking news. Interesting, right? Wow, so interesting.
Yeah. So the
Wow.
visual arts is always something that, obviously I've gravitated towards. There's so many overlaps with art and design. I never felt, honestly, I never felt the confidence to be able to sort of be like, I'm an artist, I'm a painter, I'm a fine artist, like after living in Italy for 7 years, surrounded by, you know, Michelangelo, Caravaggio, like all these. I'm like, I'm not a painter. Like, what am I crazy? Like Leonardo da Vinci is a painter. I'm
Oh
not a painter.
gosh.
But I think I'm trying not to be tied to the outcome, and I'm trying just to enjoy the process and just
Right,
practice and
right,
practice and
right, right.
practice and practice. And so that's something that I'm excited to dig into more in the years to come.
Wow. So we can add painter to the list. That is
Yeah.
impressive. Now, what is it that that is drawing you to that? No pun intended. What are you enjoying about it?
There's so much freedom in it, but it's also, you have so many constraints at the same time. I, as I mentioned earlier, I love that feeling of starting with nothing and ending with something. And so there
Mhm.
is something really special about having just a simple paintbrush and a few pigments in your hand, and then maybe a couple days later having a finished work that
Right.
tells a story and that communicates something about who I am to the world. And I think that's really powerful and really fun.
Right, right. And again, I love that you're not afraid to kind of share those, because I've seen, a few of those on your Instagram at Justina Blakeney. And it is kind of pretty recent if I think about it, that I hadn't seen a lot of that before. So that's really wonderful to see that you're taking us, on the journey with you. That's really great.
Thanks.
Okay, so as we wrap up, Justina, I mean, it has been so great to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdoms, not just about who you are as an artist, because clearly that is the word, but also how you developed this very successful company. So I'd love to give you the last word if there's anything else that you'd like to say to our creative folks out there who are listening.
I would just say, keep on keeping on. That's what my dad always says. It's all about the daily practice, and it's all about, finding out what that big dream or that big goal is, and then breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. And that's been my recipe for success for pretty much everything that I've ever done. And also finding the lessons in the everyday and taking that with you. And one more ism from my dad: the truth keep marching on.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Great. So definitely Justina's book just launched, Jungalow, Decorate Wild. She's going to be going on a number of book tours, so you might actually be able to catch her in person. And again, her Instagram at Justina Blakeney. Check out her work. It is truly one of a kind. So as we wrap up, thank you so much for joining us today. And this has been Maryline by Design.
Thank you so much for having me.